Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tiny. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to say if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, it really helps. And if you want to see more content into the future, please consider clicking the Patreon link down below and going to my Patreon, signing up for coaching, or just supporting me in general for that $5 or $10 a month. It really helps because for whatever reason, YouTube has not monetized my channel. So I make absolutely no money for making all this content. So in order to keep up making content in the future, if you guys really like it and you want to see more of it, please consider supporting if you can. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump back to the video. So Tiny is a super unique hero in that it can be played in pretty much every single position in Dota. It's been popular in almost every position, maybe not 5 position as much. Offlane, it hasn't been really an offlaner for a long time. Mainly carry, mid, and 4 position, but regardless, it still can be picked in almost any position. But mainly for this video, we're going to be focusing on the carry Tiny because in the last year or so, that's the main way that you're going to be playing Tiny because of a lot of different changes to abilities, Ag Shard, these kinds of things. It just makes carry Tiny the main way to play, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. If something does change in the future, I may make another video for a different kind of Tiny, but regardless, this is how we're going to focus on Tiny for now because it's the main way to play it. So, how do we think about Tiny in general? Well, the first way is that this hero does insane magic burst damage. That's actually why it's able to play in pretty much every position because there are very few heroes that can survive a full combo from Tiny, especially supports. You can pretty much kill any support in the game full to 0 unless they have like Aeon Disc or some other method of dealing with your crazy, insane burst damage combo. So you are a huge threat to supports. So that's why a lot of times you buy Blink, you buy Shadow Blade, you buy some item to allow you to get on top of very squishy heroes so you can just take them out of the fight instantly. The other way to think about Tiny is that this hero does the most right-click damage for any single right-click probably of any hero in the game. Now, I'm not 100% sure about that. There might be some other hero that can do, like, maybe Sven could do, like, the most right-click for a single right-click or something like that. But Tiny's definitely up there. If not the number one, it's definitely, like, top 3. And he does extra damage to buildings, so he probably does the most damage to buildings per right-click. The way that that's kind of counterbalanced in terms of balance is that this hero has ridiculously low attack speed. That's the main weakness of the hero. So you have to buff that up with Echo Saber, with some kind of hero on your team that helps you get attack speed like Io or Ogre, something like that, or just buy attack speed items. But really, he has like an attack that just feels like you're attacking through molasses. It's so slow. So that's the two ways to think about Tiny. But how do you incorporate that in a game? Well, first of all, like I said, you're going to be buying Blink, some item to help you get on top of squishy heroes to burst them full to 0. And then also, you're going to be right-clicking very hard with some kind of attack speed to try to cleave people down, crit people down, those kinds of things. You also have an ability, which we'll take a look at in a second, that gives you kind of a battle fury to cleave people down, to cleave enemies, to cleave creep waves, to farm very quickly. So he's also very good at farming in that way. But he does insane damage. It's just that you need that attack speed. But the way to think about the hero is that sometimes you have trouble bursting heroes down, so that can feel really bad. If you feel like you can't burst people down, that means it might not be the best Tiny game. But as a carry, you still do a lot of right-click damage, so you can kind of counter that by still being able to sustain right-clicks and do a ton of damage that way. The thing is, this hero, when right-clicking, works almost like an Ursa, in that Ursa can feel really good even if he can't burst you down with his like really quick swipes with overpower. At least he wants to be able to run in, not be forced to pop ult, not be forced to pop BKB, and still fight people. That's the same thing with Tiny. You want to be able to feel like you can run in and fight people without being forced to like pop BKB or something else like that. You want to be able to man fight people. If you feel like you can't man fight people, if you feel like you have to have BKB or you have to burst people down, that's a game where Tiny can feel pretty bad. Now, I can't give you all of the specifics about who, to go up against because this hero has insanely high HP, insanely high armor. It's just matchup dependent. It depends on, the heroes on your team, the heroes on the enemy team, how much farm you have versus them, etc., etc. But that's the main way that you want to think about this. If you can burst people, if you can get on top of them, if you can blink in or shadow blade in, if you can sustain and sit there and, crit people down with your right clicks, that can feel really good on Tiny. That's the main way that you want to be thinking about this hero. That's the main way to play this hero. But if you feel like you can't burst people down, you can't right-click people unless you pop BKB, then that's going to be a sad Tiny game. It's going to be a game where you feel like you're just really not able to carry the game. So that's kind of how to think about Tiny in general. Now let's jump into his abilities and see how they work. So now that we understand Tiny in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to be that insanely high magic burst damage hero like I talked about that also has a good amount of right click damage as well. So the first ability we're going to take a look at is Avalanche here. And so Avalanche you can just throw out in a direction. You see there's an AoE and a bunch of rocks come out from Tiny in that direction. It hits pretty much every hero in that AoE. So you can see there doing a good amount of damage in that AoE. And you can use this to farm. You can use this to harass people, etc., etc. The other thing to notice about it, one of the main things to notice about it is that when the stun comes up, because it does stun people, there's like a repeated stun that happens over and over again. And this is interesting because it's basically a way to ensure that the enemy is stunned in a way that you can kind of not purge, because every time the purge happens, like a dispel happens, it'll only dispel that one stun. It won't dispel the next stun. So they pretty much just always will get stunned no matter what. So it is interesting that it's like a repeated stun that happens over and over again along with the damage. So keep that in mind. But that's Avalanche. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple spell. Just an AoE damage spell. Rocks come out, stun you, do damage. The next ability is Toss. So this ability is pretty interesting, has some unique mechanics. The first thing that you can do is you can just walk up to an enemy, click Toss on them, and then you throw them in the air and they take damage. But you can also go up to an enemy and then click on a different enemy or even an allied creep or an allied hero, or you can even walk up to an ally and then click on any other targetable hero or creep, and you will actually toss that enemy or ally to that other enemy or ally or creep. And so it's very interesting that this can happen, because basically this is a way to do a lot of damage to heroes, to multiple heroes, because I can, do damage to both of them by applying that toss damage to both, or I can, toss an enemy back to my team, or I can toss an ally into the enemy. I can do a lot of different things with this toss ability. It also happens where, I can toss creeps. So if I walk up to this creep and I toss this creep over there, boom, I toss the creep in, does damage, etc. So it's a good way to, you can kind of snipe people from afar, you can chase people down, you can throw people out of position. It's a pretty good positioning ability. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that when you're around a bunch of creeps and you try to toss someone, or an enemy, an ally, whatever it is, it will kind of pick what it thinks is the closest hero to Tiny, and sometimes that can be difficult to really discern. So keep in mind, it is a little bit of a skill shot. You do want to position yourself in such a way that you are really the closest to the hero that you do want to target. Because if you're not targeting them directly, like I said with the main toss, then it's going to just choose whoever's closest to you. So keep that in mind. So that's Toss, that's Avalanche. Now let's look at how to combo them together. So basically what you can do is you can Avalanche people and then toss them during the duration, and they take a ton of damage. So here, we'll just take a look at this first. They take a ton of damage in combo, but let's take a look at the damage that it does if you combo them together versus alone. So we'll just Avalanche this guy. Takes a good amount of damage, and then we'll toss him. Takes a little bit of damage. You see this black line. It's a little bit less than that. It doesn't go all the way down there. But if we refresh and we combo this together, we can see it does a significant amount of damage, significantly more amount of damage there. I think it doubles. I actually forget if it doubles this. Oh yeah, Avalanche does 2 times damage to toss units. So basically it does double the Avalanche damage when you toss a unit in Avalanche. So it's very interesting in that it works that way. But the other thing that you can do is you can do even more damage during this combo because you can right click them. So you can see there, I actually get a right click off during that toss combo. So you can see with his level 13 axe, a pretty tanky hero, he just takes half his HP and damage in that one combo. But the way that you can do even more right-click damage is with this tree grab ability. So tree grab here gives you base bonus damage. You also do way more damage to buildings, you can see there, and you do cleave, kind of like Battle Fury. So what you do is, with this ability, you kind of just go to a tree, you pick it up, and now you're carrying a tree, which is very interesting. So you can walk over here to the creeps, you can hit these creeps, you can see I'm doing cleave damage. Now, keep in mind, there is a limited amount of hits. So you can see every time I hit an enemy or a creep, this tree grab count goes down because there's only 5 counts. So I'll hit this tower here to show you how much tower damage I'm doing. I have no items, and that's the amount of tower damage I'm doing. That's kind of crazy. But now you can see it goes on cooldown because I used all 5 of my hits. Now, what you can do once it goes back off cooldown is, let's say you only have 1 left. Here I have 5. Let's say I only have 1 left. You can actually throw the tree at the end to do damage there, and it actually slows the enemy for a brief amount of time when you hit them with that slowed tree. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit of an extra thing you can do with that ability. But what I will talk about now is I usually don't go in this order, but I will talk about the shard, because the shard is one of the main things that makes this hero able to be played as a carry. When you buy the shard, now you pretty much have a permanent tree. So you can just basically get a Battle Fury with extra, building damage and these kinds of things for the cost of an Aghanim Shard, which is kind of insane. It's what makes this hero viable as a carry these days. It's really, really crazy. So now you have this permanent tree. You can do this combo, and you just do absolutely insane amounts of damage to the enemy. But you can see how my attack speed is pretty slow just normally. And you can see that I haven't leveled up my ultimate ability yet. I haven't really talked about it yet. Well, the ultimate is a passive ability that does some extra stuff to just make this hero really, really strong. And when you level it up, you can see I put a point in it. And Tiny actually grows. He kind of becomes a bigger hero. So he's tiny at first, but once you get this maxed out, he becomes a huge, basically a gigantic hero. So we can level it up again. You can see he grows again. And then the third point, he gets even bigger. He's kind of a giant rock monster. So what this passive ultimate does is it gives you bonus armor. It gives you bonus damage. And it gives you a tree bonus damage multiplier. But it also a toss bonus damage as well. It gives you extra toss bonus damage. But the main thing that it does to make you even weaker is it gives you an attack speed reduction. So you can see here, look at how slow my attacks were before. Watch this. Look at how insanely slow my attacks are now. Let's level up again. Let's level up so we can get to the last level of my ultimate. So here's the biggest Tiny, and look how slow my attacks are. These are very, very slow attacks. The backswing on this attack is insane. So it's pretty much one of the slowest heroes for attacking in the entire game. But if we do a combo there, look at how much insane damage I do. So this is why a lot of times you buy this Echo Saber, because you can get those 2 attacks in, and I almost killed the axe full to 0. So you can see how this can be really good, also really good for farming, etc., etc. So that's why you're going to buy attack speed items. You buy things like Daedalus, other critical strike stuff to do extra damage, all these kinds of things. Things like Blink to get on top of people. That's mainly how Tiny works. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Briefly, I actually will talk about the Ags. I don't always do this, but basically Ags, what happens is you can stand in trees. I'll just do it here, and it tosses trees to a location, so I can press D, and then I just send a bunch of trees to a location, and it does a ton of damage. It does, I think it applies Echo Saber and other things like that. It'll just do ridiculous amounts of damage. Just another way for this hero to do more damage. But that's not really Tiny carry focus, because you would rather focus on like manning up and right-clicking people, etc. But you can see how what I described for Tiny's strengths are insane burst damage, really high right-click damage, but crazy, crazy low attack speed, so you have to buff it up in some way. Before we end this segment, though, I'm just going to show you very briefly how much damage this hero does to towers. So look at that. Look at how quickly this hero can kill towers. That was just one Echo Saber hit, basically 2 hits from the Tiny. I could kill this tower in like 5 hits. Like, it's actually ridiculous. Or 5 sequences, at least, of the double hit from Echo Saber. This hero is absolutely ridiculous with how much damage it does to buildings. So if you ever get an opportunity to go high ground, if you ever have some attack speed, you will just melt buildings so quickly. So, in any case, that's Tiny. That's how his abilities work. That's how he's able to be a carry with his shard and all those kinds of things, and also burst people down. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. Now we're jumping into a replay here of our TZ playing Tiny, safe lane. And it's kind of an interesting lane because he is laning against an Enigma, but it really doesn't matter who you're laning against because Tiny does kind of the same thing either way. He's going to take the tree grab first every time. Pretty much tree grab is the main way that you're going to be playing Tiny carry, and that's because this helps him farm. So you're going to be maxing this out. You're going to get your other abilities, but you're obviously maxing this out first so you can farm as quickly as possible. But he mainly uses the tree grab to secure CS. So you take it in the very beginning of the lane to secure that first lane, which is very, very normal. You can almost think of tree grab as like a mini metamorphosis from Terrorblade, is that you're stronger when you have tree, you're weaker when you don't have tree. But overall, Tiny has a lot of damage. So he has a very, very strong right-click damage, probably more right-click damage than almost any other hero in the game. So because of that, you're going to be able to outlast hit almost anybody. But his attack animation, very, very bad. His attack speed, very slow, like I said. So one of the main things in getting good with Tiny in the laning stage is learning his attack animation. So you can see how he's out CSing the Enigma here, but it's honestly because he's able to understand how to use the last hit animation very, very well. Denying, lasting, etc. Now, against Enigma, we just saw there that Tiny, or TZ, went in on the Eidolons as soon as they respawned. As soon as he denied that range creep, he went in and he killed them with the tree. So that is something you can do with this ability is that if any offlaner has like any kind of summons or anything like that, it is something where you can use your tree to get aggressive on those summons, whether it's boars, eidolons, anything like that. It's something that you can definitely do with this hero, and that's one way to use tree, because tree is a very interesting ability in the laning stage. It's the main way that you're going to be playing around the lane. Otherwise, you're doing normal carry stuff. You're securing your farm, securing your CS, doing lane equilibrium things, these kinds of things. The main thing is, how do you use tree? Are you going to use it to clear eidolons? Are you going to use it to secure CS? Do you need to throw the tree at the very end to get some harass damage in? Are you going to use the tree to mainly harass because you can feel like you can feel pretty strong, you feel pretty good at last hitting without the tree? Those kinds of things. It's just like, do you need to use it for eidolons? Do you need to use it to harass, to zone the enemy out? Do you need it to secure CS? These are all questions you have to ask based on the matchup, and that's how you're going to use them. The other thing is, obviously, you can get a point in toss, a point in avalanche. These are good for harassing, for securing CS. You can use that avalanche to secure range creep CS, etc. You can also use toss. Keep in mind, if you want to level that second, you can use that if you feel threatened. You know, the enemy's going to go on you. They're going to chase you down. You can also use that to throw them back, or potentially to even throw the enemy into your tower. So keep that in mind. That's something that support tinies will do often, is they'll run in, they'll take a point and toss, and they'll toss the enemy into the tower range, which is something you can do as well. So that is an option, even as tiny carry once you hit level 2 or 3. So keep that in mind. But that's honestly mainly the laning stage. It's all about how you use tree grab, using your abilities defensively. Do you need to go on the eidolons or something if there is a summon or something like that? And that's the main way to think about the hero. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to passively farm, get your max levels in tree grab. You're not really going to be, you know, super aggressive because you're not putting a ton of levels in avalanche or toss, because you mainly want to farm on tiny carry. So keep that in mind. It's not something like, he gets aggressive when he can, but it's when he gets aggressive when he can, but he's not just going to like look to be all out aggressive, do a ton of damage, because that's really not how the hero works yet. So that's mainly the laning stage for tiny. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's just all about how you use this ability. Can you toss people in or out, and so on and so forth. So that's tiny laning stage. Let's fast forward a little bit to when you transition out of the laning stage into that early game portion. I basically just want to show you that around this 6-7 minute timing is when you can kind of transition to the jungle. He hit level 6, so he has that point in his ultimate, which helps him farm. And with this tree grab, he's able to farm stacks. So we can see he stacks the big camp here. He farms this up, but he's not going to be like a Luna or like a Medusa. He doesn't really love to transition fully to the jungle. It is possible you can transition to the jungle if you need to, but you are a strong, tanky hero. So he can do stacks like we see right here with the big camp and then this aggressive stack that the Omni scouts out for him. So it is possible. It's just not something that you love doing. So for the next, like, few minutes, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to see him kind of just rotate here between lane and this kind of tri-camp area in his jungle. That's really going to help speed up his farm. That's mainly what you're going to be wanting to do on Tiny, because it's very hard for the enemy to boot you out. You see, he has 1500 HP with Strength Treads on. It's actually insane how much HP he has, and he has a good amount of armor here as well. So it's just one of these things that you usually, in most matchups, unless you Giga lost the lane for some reason, you're going to be able to sustain in the lane. But you also don't want to jungle full time, because your tree grab is going to be on cooldown for like half the time. So keep that in mind. Now, before we move on to the next clip, I just want to say this. It's about 9 minutes. He's almost done with his Echo Saber. He's going to get it in about 10.5 minutes. That's a pretty good timing. But the main timing that you want to be focused on is that 15-minute timing when you're allowed to buy, when you're able to buy Ag's Shard. That's super, super important, because you want to have the exact amount of gold, or at least right around the exact amount of gold, enough to buy the shard exactly at 15 minutes, because that's a huge, huge power spike, a huge timing on this hero. So he's going to get his Echo Saber flown out to him. He's going to get it about 10.5 minutes. And then he has 4.5 minutes to farm up 1400 gold. Well, it should be pretty easy unless he feeds to farm that. So he's actually going to go for one component of the Shadow Blade before he gets that 1400 gold. And then he's going to have just enough gold at 15 minutes to get his shard. And that's perfect. That's exactly what you want to do. Now, it doesn't matter if you have no components of the Shadow Blade, if you have 2 components of the Shadow Blade. It doesn't really matter what components you have of your items. You just want to make sure that you have exactly enough gold at that 15-minute mark to get that shard, because it's a super, super important time. Now, you should, if you're having a good game or any semblance of game, complete your Echo Saber before that 15-minute timing and still have enough gold to get the shard. That's honestly the main goal on Tiny. I think you can do that pretty much every single game. Now, what you can do, but what I don't always recommend, is getting involved super early. So he is pretty strong. but he's not the strongest. You can see he's still going to be taken down with a bunch of combos from the enemy, so getting involved early like this, not super recommended, because it will slow your farm speed down. So he was having a great game before this, but now he's having just like an okay game. So keep that in mind. That is something that you can do, but until you hit that 15-minute timing, I would not recommend getting super involved. So that's pretty much how to play the early game. You can get involved. You can fight with your team. You see TP's back mid. He can push. You are strong. You can take towers if you're 5-manning. It is something that you can do. He knows boat is down, stuff like that, so he is trying to get aggressive. It's something you can do, but I would mainly think about waiting for that 15-minute timing because Shard is just such a huge power spike for the hero. So you can see that now that he died, he was like, screw this. I'm just going to go back to the jungle, wait for a few more minutes, and then we can get aggressive. So I skipped ahead just a little bit here. It was only like a minute and a half. And he does look to get aggressive, and that's largely, I think, because, one, his team is all together. They want to push mid, but the 15-minute timing is coming up. He has just enough money. He has 1,500 gold here, you see, and he's going to get his shard sent out to him immediately, but he can still put pressure on the tower, so this is a great timing, putting pressure on the tower. His tree grab shard is about to fly out to him. They get 2 kills on the enemy, and you can see he's still going to melt the tower here once his tree grab comes back off cooldown. So maxed out tree grab, you're doing insane damage to towers. Just look at how much damage he's doing to towers. He also gets that buff from the invoker, and he honestly killed the tower in like 3 hits there at the end. It had like a quarter HP, and he just killed the tower after a quarter HP. But you can see his courier is now coming to him, and it's flying him a shard. Perfect timing. So this is exactly how you want to be playing this hero. Now, before we move to the next clip, I wanted to pretty much say this is how you want to think about the 15-minute timing. You can farm. So they just got aggressive. They just went in. They secured that mid tier 1. That's great. His Shadow Blade is kind of coming soon. So he does want to farm this up. But it's not something where this hero, yes, it is a Battle Fury. Yes, it is Cleave. Yes, you can farm quicker. But it's not just the fact that he has this cleave ability to farm quicker, because you can farm pretty quickly otherwise. The main thing about this ability is now you can choose to do literally whatever you want. It's kind of like you have the choice to get involved or to farm. And that's the biggest thing, is you can farm very quickly if you need to, but you can also get involved if you need to, because you can see how aggressive he's going to be going here on this enemy carry, the enemy spend. He gets involved, and that's largely because you have a good amount of spells, a good amount of points in your spells. Now he has maxed Avalanche, 2 points in Toss, and he has Permanent Tree. So you can see, instead of focusing on farming, he's running around with his team and getting involved constantly because he can afford to do so. Because it's very hard to deal with this hero now that he has Permanent Tree. So he gets his Shadow Blade delivered to him. He immediately goes right in onto the Enigma there, and just burst the Enigma full to 0 because the Enigma was under the ward. So you can see how he's not just, it wasn't like 15 minutes hit and he said, okay, well now I'm going to take this time that I was farming and farm some more. He actually immediately gets aggressive and then uses his Shadow Blade timing to get aggressive as well. So this is exactly how you want to play Tiny. You don't just want to sit back passively. Yes, you can scale well. Yes, you carry pretty well, but this 15-minute timing is super strong. You can get very aggressive with this timing, with this ability, because you just have this permanent tree grab that you will just be cleaving heroes down, killing enemies super quick in your combo now that you have a lot of points in your magic damage spell. So that's how to think about Tiny, transitioning from that early farming game to that kind of mid-game style where you can fight or farm. So we fast-forwarded ahead a little bit here, and this is kind of what I wanted to show you about the mid-game portion of Tiny, is that this hero would much rather get, like, pickoffs on the side lane than to be involved in a full 5-on-5 fight. So we can see here he immediately Shadow Blades up, he goes in on the Kunkka, gets a good kill off, and then immediately goes right back into killing the Enigma here. So you can see how he basically was able to get those 2 pickoffs, and then you can turn pickoffs like that into towers very easily with this hero. But really, I didn't show you a clip earlier that they went to try to Rosh and he actually died because he went in, he used his combo on a Kunkka, and then the Kunkka popped BKB, and then the whole team kind of swarmed, and they killed the Tiny in the black hole, and it just didn't really work out great for them. He would rather kind of go in on the back lines, go in on the supports, get some easy pickoffs there in the fight. You don't really want to sit in the front and, like, man up on people. That's really not what you do. That's what I'm saying, because you want to, like, burst people down. You don't love in this game, against Black Hole, against the Sven, against Boat, against all of these things, it doesn't really feel that good to man up with Tiny. So this is a game where you can't really man up on people, but you can burst people down. You can burst all the supports down. You can burst the Enigma down. You can see he even bursted down the Kunkka there, who is usually a pretty tanky, hero. So there's very, very few heroes that you can't burst down. But during this sequence, you can see he turned those pickoffs into towers. Now let's just speed it up a little bit. And we can see how he'll do the same thing here. He gets a DD. They transition it into a mid-tier 1. And then I think a fight happens and his entire team dies, but he doesn't really participate in that kind of straight-up 5-on-5 fight, like head-on. He just doesn't like to do that. He's also kind of out of position. So the fight happens. A black hole goes out on 2. Comes back here, tries to, burst down the Sven, sees that the fight is lost, gets out. He's not going to, like, go in and man fight. It's really not what the hero does, but he does look for kind of pickoffs on the back lines. So he sees people are low, but he doesn't want to reveal himself because everyone's there. He plays a little bit safe, but now that he knows that they're splitting up and everyone's running away and the Kunkka's down here alone, he's actually going to go on the Kunkka. So you can see this is exactly how you want to be playing Tiny, is you want to use this hero as like a split, not a split pusher necessarily, but like a pick-off hero for anybody that's farming alone. So you can see even though it was literally I think it was a 1v5. The entire enemy team was alive, and it was only him alive. He's able to pick off the Kunkka in the side lane. Then he goes behind the fight happening around Roche, kills the Mirana. So this is exactly how you want to be playing Tiny. You want to be playing fights in games where it seems hard, where you can't man fight people, when they have Black Hole, when they have other big ultimates that are going to control you. You kind of fight really scrappy. You fight by picking people off, by using your Blink, by using your Shadow Blade or your Silver Edge to get in the back lines, pick off supports, etc., etc. Because any time that the entire enemy is alive and they're using this boat combo, they're using, the Ags from Kunkka when they're using Black Hole, it just does not feel good to be a Tiny. And you can see, if it wasn't for the Omni ultimate, he actually would have died there. He doesn't love man fighting the Sven. It's not something he loves to do. So that's pretty much how to think about Tiny, how to man fight with Tiny, how to play Tiny in general throughout most of the game. And you can see, whenever they're allowed to get a lot of their abilities off on him, it doesn't look great for him. He's pretty low, but he also is super, super tanky. And he's just going to be able to clean up this game, end this game pretty quickly. But that was largely because of the way that he was able to play in this scrappy pick-off way, despite having some fights that were not really going his way with his team dying a bunch. So that's how to think about Tiny. That's how to play Tiny. And once you start snowballing like this, then you can start really team fighting and doing a ton of damage. Now that he has this AC, he's just going to be absolutely just destroying people. He has 3.5k HP. He has the AC, 4.4k with the Omni here. Just absolutely insane. They're already ending. So that is how to play Tiny. I hope that guide was helpful for you guys. I hope that makes Tiny Carry a little bit easier to play. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Patreon for coaching, to support me, etc. Look out for my streams on Friday on Twitch and on YouTube as well. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.